I am so happy to be back seeing y'all when we record.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh, I know. Much better than when you're on the phone.
This is our first in-person recording of the year. This is our first time we've recorded this year.
Oh, yeah.
It is not the
Happy 2023, everybody.
Yeah, it's not the listener's first episode, but it's our first episode.
That's true.
And to the listener, welcome to Hugo Girl. I'm Amy.
I'm Lori.
I'm Haley.
This is a podcast where we talk about Hugo Award winners and adjacent items and laugh and laugh and laugh. Today, we're talking about the Doomsday Book by Connie Willis, which won the Hugo and the Nebula in 1993. It split the Hugo with A Fire Upon the Deep by
Werner Vinge.
Werner Vinge.
It also won the Locust that year, so it was the Triple Crown.
Oh, wow, Triple Crown. And it was, great. So that'll be exciting. Lori, housekeeping. What you got?
I have so many houses to keep. Okay, so first, we are hopefully going to be going to the Worldcon in Glasgow in 2024.
Woo.
And on that subject, our friend on Twitter, friend and listener Raj, said that when we are in Glasgow, we should have a tasting of Scotland's official drink, Iron Brew.
Is that like Gus and Brew from Letterkenny?
Is it made of real iron?
It's made of real brews. It's a soft drink. And Kevin, having spent some time in Scotland, knows a thing or two about it. But you haven't had Iron Brew, have you? Oh, you have had Iron Brew. Why don't you hop on Haley's mic there and tell us what you think about it?
It's been a while, so I don't remember the details. I enjoyed it, but I also understand why it is divisive.
Oh.
It is uniquely... Can't remember exactly or describe it, but it is uniquely flavored. Yeah.
Okay. Uniquely drinky.
Like okra.
So that led to a discussion of we should have a tasting fest in Glasgow and bring in Octothorpe and have a food tasting where Americans taste things and they laugh at us. And Octothorpe said that they were going to bring all the weird crisps, and haggis came up.
I love weird crisps.
And I volunteered you guys to eat the meat haggis.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll do it.
I'll do that. It's innards.
I'll probably like it.
Who doesn't like an innard?
I like a blood sausage, so.
So you heard it here in Glasgow. We're going to have Americans taste things, and everybody can laugh at us about it.
We could cross-train by getting all the funny crisps from the Beaufort Highway Farmers Market, too.
I love a good crisp.
I do too. I'll eat a potato chip with anything.
We should
on
bring
it.
the Kroger prime rib chips.
I looked and they're
Scotland.
gone, and I almost cried. And
Gone?
They weren't there. They've got the barbecues and the... I know.
Oh, well.
All right. So that's that. So in about 2 years from now, you have that to look forward to. We'll try to record it because nothing makes for better radio than people crunching on potato chips.
Hugo Girl ASMR.
Yes. Hey, our food episode, our cookbook episodes were very well received.
That's true.
Okay. So then also, we are over on Mastodon, everybody. So you can look us up on Mastodon.
And by we, she means Lori.
Yeah. And I'm like not doing a good job about it.
Is it active? I thought...
Yeah. I just am not doing a good job about it because I just can only look at so many things at once. So I'm posting our new episodes and stuff, but I'm not doing as much conversing. But I bring it up to say that author Sophie McKeon, who's a friend of ours on Instagram and on Mastodon, left a really nice post and tagged us in it about our big time episode.
Oh.
And Sophie said, I highly recommend Hugo Girl podcast. Latest episode is on Fritz Leiber's 1958 Hugo winner, The Big Time. You don't need to read the book to enjoy listening. Love the feminist take, especially the chest misogyny check. I think that's a polite way of saying boob talk. Sophie
check.
That's
went
a
on to
Christian
say,
name.
delivered in a fun, lighthearted way, underpinned with thoughtful, intelligent flaws. Really enjoyed listening to the team robustly discuss a book's merits and flaws. That was
Robust.
So nice.
That's
yeah.
a damn good review.
Yep,
is a
that
damn
made my
good
day.
review.
Another fun thing that happened is, as many may know, Kevin and I went to the Moby Dick Marathon.
Woo.
And I was posting about it on Twitter, and then I said, Mary Robinette should read some year. Mary
best
Robinette
friend.
Kowal of Lady Astronaut fame. And they have like dignitaries read the first couple chapters usually, or like local celebrities. And I was like, Mary Robinette should do this sometime. And do you know what she did? She recorded herself reading the first paragraph of Moby Dick
Oh.
and posted it on Twitter. And I said, oh, have you read it before? Have you narrated it before? And she said, no, I did that just for you.
Mary Robinette.
I could not believe that. That was
you
wild.
little gem of a human
What an
person.
absolute queen.
And she had the cute little background on it.
Oh, yeah. She
Loved it.
made a
So
little
good.
nautical theme. It was incredible.
It was very cute.
So we're all like, everybody just email the New Bedford Whaling Museum and say, you really got to get Mary Robinette to read Loomings.
And send in her portfolio, which now includes reading the first chapter.
Totally. And then the last thing that's exciting is that we're going to be included in the Locust Magazine year-end review for 2022.
Very cool.
We're making the big time, guys.
Yeah, and that, I believe, is going to be their February issue.
Oh, cool.
And I talked to Arlie Sorg, the senior editor, and he said that it would be their February issue, and usually that'll be online like maybe a month or so after that. And Arlie is a good egg because they had sent us a couple emails about it, and they went to our spam folder, Gmail.
Oh.
And so Arlie reached out on Twitter and was like, hey, I've been trying to get in touch with y'all about being in our year-end review. And I was like, what? I'm so sorry. And I found like 3 emails in the spam folder. So I really appreciate Arlie for going the extra mile to reach out to us so we didn't miss out on that. It was really nice.
Agreed.
It will
Thanks, Arlie.
Gmail will deliver every junk mail, but not.
I know.
No kidding. Hello, friend. I have recently inherited 10 million American dollar. I just need your bank account number. So that's all the housekeeping. And the last thing that I'll say is that John on Facebook recommended that we read Doomsday Book.
Thanks, John.
Yeah, thanks,
Good
John.
rec.
Hi, John.
Good rec. Speaking of, shall we?
Let's do it.
I just want to also take a moment to say that Queen Connie Willis has won more science fiction awards than any other writer. She's
awesome.
won 11 Hugo Awards.
Whoa.
Wow.
God bless her
For
heart.
like short story and novels.
Yeah.
And wow.
I mean, and apparently she's the stand-up queen of the science fiction convention circuit.
Like she's funny?
She's very funny.
I can see that.
I can see that. That's the word on the street. Yep. Okay, so fair warning. This book is actually capable of being spoiled, so don't listen.
Unlike many of
if
them.
you want to read it, we'll all just wait here for you to come back.
Yeah. We'll see you in a month.
Yep. No, we'll just be sitting right here. Okay, so plot summary. This is very bare bones because a lot happens, but
That seems like a good call.
yeah. It was barer bones, but I felt like I needed a little bit. Okay, so the book follows 2 parallel plots focused on our heroes, Kivrin and Dunworthy. Kivrin is a graduate student at Oxford in the 2050s, by which time we have the ability to travel back in time. Only 30-ish years to go. Yeah. Kivrin is sent back to Oxfordshire in the 1300s. She is supposed to go to 1320, but instead she is accidentally sent to 1348, the year the Black Death comes to England. Kivrin is sick when she comes through the quote-unquote net to the 14th century, and that affects her ability to return to the drop location so she can be retrieved. She ends up embedded with a noble family living in a local village, and it slowly becomes apparent that the family is there because they are fleeing the plague. Kivrin nurses the family and the rest of the village through the plague along with the local priest, Father Roche, Hero. Meanwhile, Dunworthy is in the present freaking out. A deadly flu epidemic hits Oxford right after Kivrin leaves, starting with Beaudry, the tech who ran the drop, which sent Kivrin back. Because Beaudry is ill, Kivrin is not locatable in the past. Then, Gilchrist, the criminally inept acting head of the medieval department, shuts down the net, thinking the flu might have come through it. Also running interference on the Kivrin rescue are 1. Rain, 2. A cadre of American bell ringers, and 3. A future without cell phones. Dunworthy is finally aided by the partially recovered Beaudry, Colin, the gobstopper-obsessed 12-year-old, and the many girlfriends of Willie Gadsden to travel to 1348 to retrieve Kivrin. While there, he is confronted with the stark realities of plague and the effect that extreme loss and powerlessness have on Kivrin's psyche. There is also a cow that I felt very sorry for.
Mm-hmm.
Well done.
Anything,
Good job.
anything to add?
No?
Okay. I feel like characters are going to pop up while we're talking, but
Yeah.
just,
fine.
you know, there's a family she's living with in the past and their names are going to come up. And there's a lot of people running around Oxford trying to keep this flu under wraps.
Let us also tell the listeners that our Amy Sally studied at Oxford.
I sure did.
Oh.
This is a little walk in the past.
Yeah, I thought it was cool.
It was great.
Also,
And they mentioned my college, too. They mentioned
really?
Keble College. Yep.
oh, nice. And also, Agnes would have her bell. I keep thinking of
She would have her bell.
I've been thinking about it. I would have my bell. It's so easy to hear in a
Yeah.
little kid's voice, too. So it became all the more
Yeah. So
I thought Connie wrote her really well.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
little girl.
She was 4-ish.
Yeah, something
like
like
that. And yeah, she was precious.
Like her mind is just on shuffle, like a little kid is.
And she was irritating, but kind of endearing. And like, it was, and she had, what was her toy that she called, oh, shoot.
It was like the little thing she rode, right?
Yeah.
Her wagon?
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
she treated it like a baby?
But she called it like its name.
It was like Blanchette or something.
I'm not going to be able to remember it. It's going to drive me crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, I took truck to see the dog. Okay, goodies from Goodreads. I'll go first because mine's not very good. Reed from Goodreads says, and he spoke to me when he said this, so I put it in here. Somewhere buried in this 500-page doorstop is a perfectly serviceable 200-page novella screaming to get out.
Aw.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. All right. Majority good reviews. I found an amazing 2-star review from Francine, and she provided us. It's a very long review. It's worth reading. She provides us with a litany of all the characters' main refrains of complaints and their percentages in the story.
Huh.
So I picked my favorite 5. Badri, I know you've just woken up and are sick and delusional, but what went wrong? Tell me what went wrong. 30% of the story. The next one is, where will I put these bell ringers? We're running out of toilet paper, which
Lavatory paper.
Lavatory paper. The priest is an idiot. He doesn't know what he's doing. And oof, get away from me, cow. I can't milk you.
That's 75% of the book right there.
Yeah. Those are like the common refrains.
That's really funny.
And you would think it would be a short book, but those things happen over and over and over.
I can't find the drop. Must talk to Gowan.
I thought
Where
about
is
this. I didn't mind it overall, but it was like reading by rote. Like, I'm going to memorize that. Now I know all of it.
It got very repetitive, yeah.
All right, I've got Caroline, who gave it 2 stars, and Caroline said, it won the Hugo and the Nebula Awards, and if there were an award for most repetitious, Doomsday Book would have won that too.
Aw.
So I think I know what our main complaint is.
You know what's funny? There was, at the top of the Goodreads page, there was a 2-star review, which I was surprised that was the one that's like there when you first look it up, but it was a really long 2-star review, and I agreed with every single word of it, and I would give this book 4 stars. It was interesting.
I gave it 4 on Goodreads, even though I do think it got very repetitive. I think
yeah.
I was curious where in her writing career this came, if she was typically writing short stories and then wrote this, because it does feel like a padded out short story. Like, that's what it felt like to me.
I've got a theory on it, actually.
Oh, let's hear it.
So, you can take it or leave it. Like, people might like it. It depends on how much you like it, but I think it doesn't really explain the 2050s plotline, but for the 1300s plotline, if you were going back in time, you would want to see everything. Like, you like, I felt like I was living in this. Like, the time that I watched Call Me By Your Name, I felt like I was just in Italy for the summer. Like, you just are in there and you're seeing every single detail. It was like when Victorian novelists would describe a room because they're getting paid by the words. So they're like, and then the wallpaper, the wall, you know. But I could see it through Kivrin's eyes of being like, I want to take in all of this and memorize it forever.
Yeah, and that made a lot of sense. And it's funny how well she sketched out that part in comparison to how she sketched out the present in Oxford.
There's bells ringing.
There's bells ringing, there's rain.
Yeah.
And like, apparently everything is running distance from each other. Which,
everyone was always
I mean,
sprinting.
Oxford's not huge, but it's not that small.
Colin can get everywhere on foot.
So can old Mr. Dunwood running around.
But it just seems small.
I know. I feel like that was kind of the failure of what she was writing. Like, she just didn't give as much attention to the present as she did the past. And it suffered, I think, from it.
Yeah.
And it was so slapsticky in the present.
Yeah.
Like, we had the lavatory paper
bacon
gag.
and the
We had
eggs.
Colin and his gobstopper. We had,
I've got to make sure Kivrin doesn't date this guy.
Willie Gadsden and all his girlfriends.
I love him.
He's good.
It's funny. I was thinking he reminds me of Louise in Hominids. Louise was the very, very sexy, like postdoc student. And like anytime they needed something, Louise would like bat her eyes at the car salesman and they'd get a good car with air conditioning and that kind of thing. And William kind of works the same way where they're like, I need a thing. And William's like, I know a girl.
Yeah.
It was constantly making out in a closet with somebody who's helpful.
It was really funny.
Yeah.
It was a cute little plot device. I liked it.
I mean, it was all very funny. It just did, the tone of the present just did not match the tone of the past. Like, Kivrin's back in the past, like, it's hard
Watching children die.
die
And it's
and like
the gallstone.
I mean, and And poor Rosamund with her being a child bride.
Oh
and
my
there was
God.
all this really heavy stuff in the past. And then you skip to Oxford and there's Dunworthy's running down the street again in the rain. And it's like.
So in the first couple of pages, the book's dialogue is so British. And I was like, oh, this is so British. She's not even British. She's American. So
I wondered.
she's just like, I do hope you'll come to the bathroom. Like, it's very much like, you know, what an American would imagine a British person would sound like.
I would be very curious to hear some British people talk about like the language and the
How authentic.
that
I
kind
guess,
of thing. Yeah.
I think it would be like a Brit writing American stuff being like, it was awesome and everything was awesome.
Everything is awesome. Everything is awesome. Yeah. So the tone of the present also didn't match what was happening in the present. That was the other thing.
Oh, yeah, it was horrible.
The present has this quarantine going on from the flu, and people are dying, and there's people stuck in Oxford with nowhere to live. There's no food. There's no lavatory paper. God love Finch.
Bacon and eggs are almost out.
Almost out. And it just seems strange that everybody's going around everything was so humorous.
I think that's reflective of real life, though. Like, I mean, it's so easy to just say, like, look at what we did in March of 2020. People were horribly, horribly sick. The healthcare system was way overstrained. And those of us who were, like, safe and healthy and working from home were, like, awash in memes about toilet paper.
We ran out of lavatory paper, too.
We ran out of lavatory paper.
Watching Tiger King, laughing
yes,
about.
exactly. Yeah. Horrifying things were happening all around us, and we were, like, watching Tiger King.
But these people weren't laughing with each other. They were just like the tone of the observation of what they were doing was lighthearted. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess.
Like these people were all traumatized and having a terrible time. Dunworthy was just beside himself.
I think part of it too is like a big chunk of it is Colin, who's just like a sweet kid. So
Colin.
Colin is great. And like Mr. Finch. So Mr. Finch is he struck me as like the steward of the school.
Yeah.
And so he's like obsessed with the toilet paper, the eggs, the bacon, but it makes sense because like that's his purview. So everything else around him is in upheaval.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that that's what he would become hyper focused on because it's the like supposed to be the thing that he's in control of and now he's not. Yeah. And so it's like funny for the reader to see that stuff happening, although I think it happens way too much. Like the book would be like 100 pages shorter.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think some of that makes sense because when awful things are happening, like silly, trivial things are also happening alongside them.
Yeah. Absolutely. We saw that.
The same lady from my review on Goodreads said, I'm convinced that Colin is the hero of the story, despite what the author would have me believe.
He 100% is the hero of the story. God bless old Colin.
Yeah.
Busting in the quarantine and getting Dunworthy to fucking do something.
I love Colin. I love the way she's created Colin because he's in that sort of sweet spot of early adolescence where you haven't internalized the idea that it's like not cool to be excited about stuff.
Yeah.
So he's like got all this energy. He's got some amount of like physical capability to do things since he's a bigger kid. So he can like run around and become the like erstwhile medicine delivery boy, which was really surprising to me. But he's also manages to be like really jazzed about all of his tasks and like reading his little book about the Middle Ages. And he's so cute.
Everything's either necrotic or apocryphal.
Oh, the language.
Apocalyptic.
Apocalyptic. That's what
he says Mrs. Gadsden she's necrotic or if something's exciting. He's like apocalyptic.
It's so cute.
It's so funny. He's a great character.
Yeah.
She does really well with kids, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. And then, so I don't normally, I think we've talked about this. Like, I don't normally like assign people identities and like physical characteristics when I'm reading, but Dunworthy to me was Giles from Buffy, 100%.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
That's perfect.
It's perfect. Yeah.
You know, I have
Dr. Ahrens was my dermatologist in my head.
Oh, I've told Kevin before that I really have never identified with a male character in my life, which is certainly hyperbole, but Mr. Dunworthy, I really identify. Mr. Dunworthy is the person I identify with in this book.
He's such a
like Kivrin. I have been a teenage girl, and and I was like, yeah. I mean, I hope for the best for her. Mr. Dunworthy, I was like, I know, I'm so worried too. Mr. Dunworthy,
he was
are you okay?
so worried.
Mr. Dunworthy, please put your mask on. I just love him.
She did learn from Dunworthy though to keep looking for that drop.
No one gave up on that drop.
She has to find the drop, and she has to talk to Gawain.
I would like to discuss what possibly should be saved for soap stuff, but I want to talk about it now.
Okay.
Kivrin can't find the drop because she was very sick when she comes through. And then she doesn't even know who rescued her. She has no idea where it is. It's a whole thing. She talks about it a lot. Then, when Dunworthy and Colin come through, Colin has a locator?
Oh, I know.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I've got there is an in-text explanation for that. I don't think it's a good one, but they talked about how there was a risk to Kivrin's safety if they sent her through with any piece of modern technology and someone found it. They could be like, oh, she's a witch. Look at her spellcaster thing. So that was the in-universe explanation for that. Why they couldn't have put something that looks like a rock and she left it at the drop.
Yeah.
And then something in her boot heel that can help her
Like
find
emit
it.
something?
Yeah, there's
Yeah,
if
I
you can
feel
invent
like-
time travel.
If they can embed a recorder in her wrist bone.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I didn't necessarily buy that, but there was an explanation for it.
Oh,
Okay.
also, so don't forget, if you say, so I said Kivrin a million times because it just doesn't roll off the tongue and it's a weird word, but when I say it, I sound like I'm saying Kevin in an Australian accent. Kivrin. LMAR.
Apologies to any
Yeah,
Australian
we're gonna
listeners.
get tweets about that.
The Australian accent is the best.
It is the best.
It's really hard to imitate.
But yeah, Kivrin.
Okay. Oh, did you guys know that Kivrin? So this is her. Connie Willis has written 4 different works that have this Oxford time travel situation that pop up in it. Did y'all know that Kivrin shows up as a minor character in Firewatch?
That's the one that kicked it off, right?
Yeah, and she's the protagonist's roommate, who is described as having undertaken a traumatic time travel journey to the Middle Ages.
I was just,
That sounds right.
when the book ends, I'm like, this poor 19-year-old is going to be scarred.
All right, I'm glad you said that because I want to talk about. Okay, so we were kind of chit-chatting on our little group text about the point of the book, and we got a very good. Let's start off with talking about our text from Bob.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We got a Twitter DM from listener Bob.
Also reader.
Also reader. He reads. And he made a point that none of us had really thought about, which was a good one. And then it started us talking about the point, capital
Okay.
P of the book. And I think that'll be good.
Okay. So, Bob, among other things, mentioned that he's a retired microbiologist and he was working as a microbiologist during the HIV pandemic. And he said there was nothing we could do. And he said Kivrin's helplessness, because of the time this was published during the AIDS crisis, he said Kivrin's helplessness has context, and in the scope of history, it's much more accurate. The current pandemic fuzzes that image. He was basically saying that they went for so long without understanding HIV and AIDS, and he said that Paxlovid is an antiviral that was developed for AIDS, and he said that we knew what SARS-CoV-2 was in a week, whereas with AIDS, we did not know for a really long time, and there was just a lot of mystery around it, and we were sort of just in over our heads and helpless. And he said, I remember attending AIDS conferences when we still had no idea what it was. That is a normal state of humanity, ignorant and doomed.
And that's a really interesting point. The context to her writing about pandemics, I think, is really, really interesting. I did not take away from it that humanity is ignorant and doomed. But I want to hear what you guys...
It says Doomsday on the cover, man.
Right, but that can mean a lot of things.
Yeah.
No, I don't necessarily think that's the point of the book, but I think that there's a point to it that resonates for me in what Bob said, because they have a lot of conversations about, oh, we can't send Kivrin to Mr. Dunworthy. He's like, we can't send Kivrin to the Middle Ages. The Middle Ages is a 10. And basically they assign like risk numbers to different centuries or different eras. And 10 is, of course, the most dangerous. And people keep pushing back with kind of a wryness, but they're like, every century is actually a 10. We just like pretend it's not. From where we're looking, we think our lives are great, but like, here are all the reasons we're a 10. So everything is actually a 10. And so to me, that Bob's comment about it's kind of normal for us to have no fucking idea what's going on and be helpless and feel despair. I think that immediately reminded me of how they say every century is actually a 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think for me, this book really brought home the humanization of characters dying in the plague. I mean, we've all studied it. We know the numbers, 1/3 to half, whatever. But like when you are reading basically in real time a child dying, and I thought she was going to live. I thought both of them would. And they die.
I did too.
And like
Reading it through the lens of a modern character.
yeah, who they don't understand what's going on. She can't explain it to them. Everything's filthy. Like
And she's never been surrounded by death like that.
yeah, no, but none of us have. I mean,
Right.
death affects people very differently. I was actually surprised in this book that they didn't have more children because, I was reading about, death in the Victorian age and like you weren't as attached to your children because most of them died. And I just can't imagine that. So
They said that in this book too, that there was, because she talks about that, Kivrin talks about that the common understanding is that people weren't as attached to their children in the Middle Ages because they didn't live. And then she says, you know, she didn't really see that. Like, it seemed like, I mean, this is a family, you know, and there was maybe a more of a coldness between the mother and the children than you might see otherwise. But she didn't see that no one cared for the children. And I'm reading A Distant Mirror now because after I finished this, I got re-inspired to read A Distant Mirror. And she talks about that. She talks about how there's no art, there's no anything, there's really not a lot that comes out of the Middle Ages that depicts motherhood, that depicts anything that would be related to children. But I was trying to decide whether I thought the takeaway was everyone's doomed. Like, we're all susceptible to disease and there's nothing we can really do about it. There's always going to be something that we can't predict and that we're going to have to react to, and it could kill a lot of people. Or if the takeaway was kind of the Mr. Rogers look for the helpers thing. When everything is terrible, look for the helpers, and that'll remind you that things aren't all bad. Because, you know, Father Roche worked really hard to, like, help people in the 14th century where she was. And people cared that, like, Eloise?
I pronounced it Eloise is
the
what I was
mother,
saying.
Eloise. Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
She was distraught over her children dying. And then if you look to the present, you know, there's this flu running through and people are talking about it people are trying to distance themselves from what's happening. Like, I think they're talking about it in these very arm's length terms about people dying and who's got symptoms now and, like, all this stuff. But Dunworthy was really sad when Dr. Ahrens died. Like,
is that Aunt Mary? She died.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But, like, Colin's mom is, like, distant and doesn't even send him presents.
And I think there's always going to be good and bad people all the time. I mean, people are people. You know, I'm not saying that humanity is all roses.
Yeah.
But I think that a lot of this was about finding connections. And that's why I think a lot of religion stuff in the book came from, too. It's like, that's what lifts you above, like, everything that happens, all the mess around you, right? I don't know. And then at the end of the book, so I thought about this because you mentioned the end of the book being so bleak, and it is. Like, she's in this village and everybody dies, and
all of them.
I mean, she's just traumatized. Like, they come and find her. She doesn't even know who they are right away.
Yeah,
like,
that was weird.
She's just watched everybody she met in that town die. But right at the end, she holds his hand and starts coming around, and he saves her in a way. And I found that to be very optimistic.
Well, I just feel like the two things that you said are not incompatible. Mm-hmm. Because we are all doomed. We are all going to die.
More than one thing can be true.
Yeah. Whether it's a pandemic or old age sitting on your front porch with a glass of iced tea in your hand, which is the dream, right? We are all going to die. So I don't think that these things are in conflict. I think we're ignorant and doomed and also can be really loving and caring. And all of those things happen in the book. Yeah. And one thing I noticed was early in the book, I was like, everyone is so rude in Oxford. It was really striking to me that all the background characters, like Badri, when he first gets sick, he bumps into this lady in the street when he's first experiencing symptoms, and she's like, I'm walking here. Like, everybody's like mad at everybody. Everybody's in such a hurry. The bell ringers are doing nothing but complaining about it. In America, this would never happen. We're filing a lawsuit. Everybody's so mad. And then, interestingly, by the end of the book, everybody's really working together. The bell ringers help Mr. Dunworthy and Badri sneak out of the hospital so that they can go to the lab and reopen the net and go to the drop and find the drop and do the thing and save the girl. But there's a real change in the side characters from the beginning of the book to the end of the book because they've been through this awful thing together. So I think that there's both of those things are present and somewhat in tension, but I mean, I think that's life.
I agree.
College thoughts. I think that's life.
College thoughts by Lori.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it makes you appreciate humanity because it doesn't matter what century you're born into because you're all born into a century. And, you know, we don't die of the plague anymore, but like I said in the group text, like, but we have mass shootings in America every single day. It's like just a different way to view the dangers that we face. So
we've already had more mass shootings than we've had days.
Yeah. And there are some countries that like put America like on like a red flag travel, like be careful going here.
I mean, I guess, and if every century is a 10, no century is a 10. Like they all just are.
That's exactly right.
You know, like we just are.
Yeah,
that's how it is.
Kimber makes a good point. She's like, it should be done on a year by year basis. Like 1968 California might have been pretty cool.
a year by year, and like let's put the globe into quadrants.
Yeah, and if she had gone to Oxford 6 months earlier, she would have been fine. So because the plague came in December, like right when she got there.
That's right. That's right.
One thing I Googled, and we can maybe take this out, but I had to Google what a terrorist jacket was.
Oh God, me too.
No, I had that written down. What is it?
And what I
think
ended
it's
up
just a
finding
green
was like
jacket.
people
One of
on
the
Reddit
things-
being like, "Does anyone know what a terrorist jacket is?"
There's a character, Lupe Montoya, who is described as wearing a terrorist jacket
Many
a
times.
million times in this book. What's a terrorist jacket?
I think it's just like a green military type jacket.
Like a Che Guevara type thing?
Yeah.
But it doesn't actually have a definition. Like,
Yeah, it's just what she
Should have made it up.
It's just a non-PC way to say like a military jacket.
Of course,
that
the woman of color is wearing the terrorist jacket.
it's very
Yeah.
non-PC. Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? Is it the kind of jacket you would hide explosives in? Like, really, what are you talking about? And the only discussion I could find, if you Google terrorist jacket in quotation marks, is people being like, "Have y'all read Doomsday Book? What is a terrorist jacket?" I felt embarrassed for Googling it. I was like, "Oh, I'm going to be on some kind of list."
Maybe it's the kind of jackets that the people wore in the Capitol insurrection.
American flag jackets.
a North Face. Yeah,
No, I had that written down. What the heck is a terrorist jacket?
I agree with it's Dunworthy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dunworthy. All of his worrying, like Lori, but when he's telling her, he's like, "You can't go back," and here's 65,000 reasons why, and one is like the plague. One, do you know how to wash a child's dead body? And it's like sending a woman back, and almost any time prior to like 1980, not a good. Women and people of color,
Dangerous.
They're
yeah,
very
yeah.
upfront. They're
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, there's lots of rapes."
Yeah.
They talk about it.
and Kivrin's like, rapes? That's not going to happen to me. I was like, girl, it might.
And I kept thinking about how different this book. I mean, she could have. So they drop you kind of like when the Terminator gets dropped. You're just somewhere. You don't know exactly where, but like, yeah, a cutthroat could have been walking by. Instead, it was a nice priest. So,
who had a lot of scars on his face, so she thought he was a cutthroat.
Which-
and she was like in like a fevered frenzy. She was very sick, but
Yeah.
it was funny that she's just like, ugly cutthroat.
Right.
He must be a murderer.
I almost Googled what's a cutthroat.
Haley, how many religious terms did you have to Google?
I looked up more words in this book than I have in my entire adult life.
There's a lot of religion in this book, a lot of Latin.
There's a lot of like, I just don't know the geography and architecture of a church. Like, I thought a rood was a tree. I mean, it might still be, but it's maybe a screen. I don't
It
know.
is a screen. So it's
A
it's
rood is a cross.
a rood is a screen. There's a screen that's between the nave and the sanctuary of a church.
Had to
It's a
Google
rood
those.
screen. I mean, it might be a. What'd you say it was? A
cross.
I mean, it could be a cross too, but it's
Yeah, I don't know why I thought it was a tree.
Like the dream of the rood. It's a cross.
okay.
Yeah.
A rood. I think what they're talking about in this is a rood screen. Though.
Yeah,
It's a-
it might
it's
have two meanings. Yeah, but so much church, and in the middle of the book, there's like 20 pages of like you're just sitting through a mass.
I know.
Oh, okay. So the rood is the cross positioned above the rood screen.
Oh, okay, there you go.
You know, it's the
Which came
screen
first?
next to the rood, so we'll just call it the rood screen.
Listen, work smarter, not harder. Naming conventions included.
Why do we think the mother-in-law hated the priest just because she was mean? Or
Oh yeah, she was
Yeah.
just snobby.
I think
She
she
really
just
did not
thought
like
she was
him.
better than him.
yeah,
Yeah,
he
and
seems
she's-
so kind.
And her snobbery is why that village got the plague. Because she was like, I need a new priest. And she sent off for a new priest, and that priest showed up, brought his boobos with him. Boobos.
did y'all Google boobos?
No, because
No,
I
I
had listened
knew
to
the word
a.
boobos.
It's so
There's a really
gross.
good podcast called "This Podcast Will Kill You," and they have an episode about the plague,
I don't know why I know
It's
what
very good.
boobos were. Why do I already know that. I don't
Ebola,
know.
maybe.
Yeah, I think I mean like world history probably in high school.
I also read like maybe half of The Plague in 2020.
I've never read that.
It is so good, but I was like, you know what? I don't think this is good for my mental health.
Too close to home.
I think I'm really glad we didn't read this in 2020.
Oh, I didn't know this was a plague
No,
book.
I
I didn't
no
either. I had
idea.
no idea.
So prescient, like the way she describes Americans.
Oh
it's
my gosh.
so accurate.
She did a pretty good job of so. In the beginning of the book, I remember writing down a note of like, what if we went back in time and took a disease to them? And I thought I was onto something.
Oh yeah, did you think maybe Kivrin brought
Yep.
something?
Yeah,
I wondered. I
I
was
thought
like,
she
oh,
was going to kill
no!
everybody with her flu.
Did
and
we create the plague like
Yeah.
when she landed there?
It's a time loop.
Yes.
Well, I thought she did a pretty good job with misdirection in this book. Like there were a couple things that you kind of don't see. I mean, you kind of see them coming, you kind of don't. Like where the flu comes from in the present, what actually happens with Kivrin and the diseases in the past. Like that she's in 1348 was actually hidden pretty well for a while. You got an idea that she wasn't in the right spot because the language was wrong and some other stuff was
It's
wrong.
amazing that 30 years would change it that much. It'd be like if we couldn't understand the 60s talk.
I know.
I was wasn't sure if that was what it was. I mean,
or the modern
she
people
was
were just
saying she
wrong.
thought maybe she was, we just really didn't have a good grasp of what people sounded like, and also she was really sick.
Can we? So I understand how she could have like a translator thing, but how did it come out of her mouth?
I don't get it.
So I don't get it either. I think that I don't get it either. I think
I decided
that
not to think too hard about it.
whatever makes her language process and come out of her face is
Was it like one of
controlled
those
by something in her brain.
Robot boxes.
It's got to be like some kind of neural enhancement.
Yeah. It's kind of like. Just,
But then I wondered when she gets home and she tries to be like, which way to the mall? I'd like fries with that. Is it like
Who did not the mall listen?
where to the mool?
the market?
To explain what the hell we're talking about, she has a translator embedded in her brain or something, and it's supposed to listen for her, translate what's being said, and feed it to her in her own language. And then when she talks, it's supposed to take whatever she's saying and put it in modern time language. And it's very mysterious.
Yeah.
The TARDIS does something similar in Doctor Who.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's cool. It's like so I got those accidentally sent translator earbuds from Amazon when I got my.
I'm sorry?
So when I ordered the Cyberpunk glasses for the podcast, the first time they came, it was not them. It was a box of translator earbuds that cost $350.
Whoa.
So you stick them in and it translates for you?
In real time.
Oh my God.
It's like having a tiny TARDIS in your ear.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Amy, since you brought up the source of the virus, I think that would be a good time to mention, or the source of the modern influenza, I would like to bring up the other thing that Bob told us. So he had mentioned when we said we were reading this, he said, ping me when you finish the book. And he was like, I want to tell you a little science thing that is wrong. And he was like, it doesn't ruin the book, but he was like, it's very, very wrong. Okay. Bob said, the source of the modern flu epidemic, and basically what they said was it was a virus that had survived in this grave at Montoya's dig site. So Montoya has an archaeological dig at a church that is in the town where they sent Kivrin to. So that's interesting. She's digging around in this church where Kivrin is in her timeline, like scooping up poor Father Roach as he barfs blood everywhere. So she's in this dig. They've opened this tomb. They eventually trace the virus outbreak back to the tomb, and they're like, a virus survived in this tomb for centuries. And Bob says viruses cannot, quote unquote, survive in graves. Maybe if it was in permafrost in Siberia, there is debate on this. But in normal temperatures, such as sunny England, RNA and DNA break down, rendering the virus unable to affect anyone. Archaeologists would be dropping like flies if this were not so. We even struggle to get fragments of the 1918 flu out of preserved specimens, then reassemble the sequence. I understand why Willis did it to complete the circle, but after 2020, it sounds like another version of blaming those meddling scientists digging up trouble.
It's like in when Notre Dame got caught on fire and they found that lead sarcophagus from like a knight. And I was like,
Don't open it! Don't open it! I was interested in that because I had this idea for a novel a couple years ago where it was like going to be my global warming
Opus.
doomsday novel, where the virus, because it's they have found live virus and I think some live bacteria in permafrost situations that's thawed, and like it's fascinating to me that this.
So if you're going to do that, pick a permafrost to be your source.
That's so what it was. I did all this research on viruses coming out of the front. They're called Pandora viruses.
Hold on. What if it's from the Beachy Island corpses from the Franklin expedition?
Ooh.
No, they've already been uncovered, but still.
But they weren't thawed.
I put them in my air fryer. No.
So while we're at the graveyard, I have a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Toward the end of the book, Mr. Dunworthy's in the hospital. He's just woken up and found out he has the 2054 COVID. And Montoya comes in and she's like, Kivrin's dead. And he's like, did you find the quarter? And she's like, not yet. And I was like, then why did she say Kivrin was dead? I was so confused. Why would you come in and be like, I know she's dead?
It was very strange.
It was very strange. And it's like a 3-sentence exchange, so you would lose literally nothing if you scooped that out of the book. So and it's so confusing.
Also, Kivrin does not behave as if she told Montoya to look for her in the graveyard.
Oh no, she did. She said, "I will try to die in the graveyard."
Right,
if I
but when
die.
she's actually when we're actually seeing her record into her little hands and like go through her thoughts process, she's like trying to leave to go to Scotland.
Yeah, but that was before she went and had
she
a
said
month of
before
trauma.
they left, she was like, look for me, I'll try to die.
I don't doubt that.
But I think when it came go time to die or not die, she was like, not die, go to Scotland.
I think that 3-sentence exchange served for me to think about time travel, which I love to do, because even though she's from the 21st century, she would have been dead. She would have died in 1348, and then her body would have been there for the past 700. I don't know. It's just interesting to think
wild.
about.
So, like,
her body would have been in the ground while she was alive.
Her as a baby and a child and a young adult would have been alive while the body was
walking over her own grave.
I love thinking about time travel because it starts to give me a headache. Like, yes. So today I did reread the time travel Wikipedia, and it's just so fun. So,
do you guys find it as insulting as I do that we could technically time travel back in time to the 20th century?
Oh God! And like how Titanic came out 25 years ago.
You know, the kids talk about they talk about the 1900s, like the late.
I
1900s.
know, late 1900s.
I was born in the late 1900s.
If you guys could go back and travel to any time and observe anything, what would it be?
I have no idea.
1860s Paris or 1920s France. Either one.
France, either way.
Yeah.
I don't know where I would go.
I have some numbers that I want to tell you guys.
Okay.
All right. Cutthroat, 62 times. Lavatory paper, 17 times. Bell ringer, 48. Bell, 329.
Oh, God.
That's almost once a page.
Agnes would have her bell.
Drop, 273. And not like, oh, maybe sometimes it's a verb. Nope, it's always the noun.
273?
So you got to get back to that drop and talk to Gowan.
Man alive.
I keep thinking about, so for the first time, maybe 2 months ago, I got really bad chapped hands. It was like just a really dry week in Atlanta. And I quickly got some bag balm, my new favorite thing. But the way that she describes the daily existence of these people, it's so harsh.
Very chapped.
It makes me think of in The Handmaid's Tale how they would hold their butter back, yes, to use it as a moisturizer.
If you guys could travel back to the Middle Ages, would you go?
No. I like air conditioning and soap and
I like autonomy. I would go as like Ebenezer Scrooge, like they can't see me. I would go look.
Oh yeah, that's
and if
great.
And if I could wear a mask with Vicks Vapor Rub in it, so I can't smell all the horrible smell.
Man, they talked about taking out her sense of smell or something before she went, so she wouldn't just be overwhelmed. I can't even imagine. I mean, there's just poop everywhere.
Poop everywhere. There's not a lot of bathing.
She was talking about how dirty everyone was, and I was really wondering, like, what if she had stayed there long term? Like, would she have ever had intercourse with another person? Because they would have just been so dirty.
Think about having like a very bad period and there's no bathtub, and you're just like, well, I guess it's over now. I'll just put on different underwear.
They just had to like stay inside basically and just get through it. They could go. I would go though. I think I would go. I'm so curious about other times that I would go.
Yeah, I do the Ebenezer Scrooge method. I like that.
Yeah. So she has all these plot devices that make it so you don't have to think too hard. Like the machine that makes the network is like, you can't have a, what's it called? Paradox. So like, there's just no paradoxes allowed.
She had the conservation of
time. Yeah. It's like,
conservation of reality.
Yeah. That from Fritz.
I think that's a brilliant way to handle it. Like,
I agree.
Because otherwise people will be like, well, what if you did this? It's like, what if you go kill Hitler and the grandbaby?
The net won't let it through. It's fine.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
I loved it. Okay, feminist faith.
I didn't have one or a misogynist moment.
Really?
Like in a book by a woman, it's like everyone
harder.
just is sort of a person.
I thought about some stuff because I read this article. Joan Gordon, she reviewed the book in June 1993 in the New York Review of Science Fiction.
Oh, that's what you
which
got.
I ordered and received electronically. Everybody should reach out to them for back issues. It's very fun. But she was talking about post-feminist and how this is a post-feminist work.
Okay.
Because around that time, that's when feminists were starting to be branded very vocally as like, harpies and that sort of thing. And Connie Willis does not she will not claim to be a feminist. Yeah. So feminism shows up in this book as a very background context thing. Like women are doctors. Kivrin is a very capable graduate student.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's all taken for granted. So like that view of the feminism of the book was really interesting to me. So that's my feminist fave. And I also really just like that Dunworthy cares a lot about Kivrin's well-being, and it's not weird.
It's not weird at all.
It's not weird. But what I did think was weird, maybe I should have said this in general discussion, but I did think it was weird that Kivrin doesn't think about anybody but him. She doesn't ever think of a parent, a partner, a friend, a cat. She's just like the only person. She's like, Mr. Dunworthy is like the father figure for her. And he's the only person that she seems to miss and long to get back to, which is fine. Like people, obviously you have, relationships with people who aren't your family or people who are stand-in for your family. But I thought it was really surprising that there was no one else on her mind when she was in the Middle Ages.
He's not even her advisor too.
No. Maybe she doesn't have family. She's sprung fully formed from the soil of Oxford.
Yeah. My feminist favorite was just, so sweet. I thought Kivrin's strength and tenderness is truly a thing to behold.
It is.
she stayed with them and stayed
She
with
didn't
them.
have to. She could be like, I'm going to Inverness. Like, we're
To
done.
the bitter end,
Yeah.
she stayed with them.
Little Kivrin.
Yeah.
I like her.
Um.
My misogynist moment was poor Maisry.
Oh, yeah, that's very
I was
problematic.
a little mad at Kivrin because Kivrin was like, I wanted to box her in the ears too. And it's like, well, you feel you're frustrated. You feel how you feel, whatever. She didn't hit her. But I was like, Maisry, probably part of the reason Maisry is so incapable is because she's been getting hit in the head her entire
Yeah.
life. And they hit her in both of the ears at the same time. They box her ears.
She's got like what football players have.
She got that cauliflower ear.
I also think
she's
maybe
got TBI.
maybe she's like developmentally.
Maybe she had some
Yeah.
disability to begin
Although
with.
she hightails it out of there with a quickness.
Yeah. Maisry is like, I know I don't want to die. I don't know much, but I know I don't want to die, and I know there's a pony I can take. Listen,
Poor
if
Maisry.
somebody got out of there, good for her. I hope she
Yeah.
made it out of there.
My misogynist moment makes a lot more sense now in light of what you said about her refusing the feminist term, is that she's got an interesting take on women in this. Like, she calls a couple of women fat. She uses the term crone, not in a good way.
Yeah, not that
So,
good way.
I just hate when women do that. Like, she didn't have to call a nurse fat. Like, why did you have to put that in there?
There was a
Yeah.
lot that was very 90s.
There's definitely
Yeah.
some fat phobia. Like, one of the complaints about this disgusting old man who's going to marry the little girl is she just keeps being like, oh, and he's so fat. And I'm like, well, if he was thin and 60 and marrying the 12-year-old,
not
would that
better.
be less bad? I don't think that would be less bad.
He was my other misogynist moment, just him.
Yeah, super gross.
Boob talk.
The one sex scene featuring Maisry, which we just talked about and kind of harkens back to our other discussion, is it's got no extraneous or gory details. It just kind of shows the transactional nature of it. She just hikes up her skirt, and then they just do it.
Yeah, there's some groping of Rosamund that happens
Yeah.
from fucking Sir Blowit.
So gross.
But other than that, there was no ogling of anybody for the most part.
There's just a lot of girls who are described as pretty. All of William's girlfriends, a pretty nurse,
Yeah.
a pretty student,
Yes.
the pretty tech who's gonna come and do the fix because Baudry's sick.
It's funny how I always notice that too. It's like you can write a book any way you want and describe your characters, but it just seems so like lazy to be like, she's just pretty.
I don't mind it because it's through Dunworthy's narrative lens.
That's true.
And I think
and he's-
Dunworthy is just noticing the fact of, oh, she's pretty. She's probably one of William's girlfriends.
Yeah,
like, I think he's just like aware of it. And I appreciate that he's not like, she's got big tits, so she's probably one of William's girls. He's just like, oh, a pretty nurse. I bet William knows her.
Yeah.
Breasts like pomegranates.
And it's more of a comment on William, I think, than
That's
it is
true,
on
that's
the
true.
women.
I do think and Gawain ogled Eloise so respectfully.
They were in love.
I know.
the courtly love.
Soap stuff, Laurie.
Oh my God,
Oh wait, I skipped fantastical food.
Well,
There
and
was-
could I briefly propose a very temporary and short segment called Tech Talk?
Ooh, yes.
absolutely.
Because I crack up. I'm not mad at Connie about this. A lot of people were mad at her for thinking of time travel but still having landlines.
Yeah.
I think it's hilarious. And it's like Neuromancer
I
still
got
had
so
landlines.
mad at this book. Like this book would not be possible if cell phones existed.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
You just text them in Scotland.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, or you would email the data about the fix to the other
Right.
person,
Yeah.
but someone has to come there in
But
person to read it.
networked computers existed in the 90s.
I know.
It makes you wonder what we're missing now.
But I wondered when she wrote it, though, like, if she wrote this in 1988 and it was published in 1992,
Yeah,
like,
that's
there
true.
was not,
Yeah.
like, your average person
That's
didn't
true.
have probably a conception of the internet or, like, the early
Yeah.
internet.
Only super advanced people.
And,
did,
and
yeah.
like, car phones were a thing, but
I
very
had
rare.
a car phone in a bag.
And I never
Yeah.
thought that would become like something I took with me everywhere.
I know.
Right. So, like, I'm not really bothered by that because, in Neuromancer, like, they can go inside a computer network, but they had to go to a payphone. So it's like, she's not the only person who's guilty of
They
this.
were even doing that in the Matrix at like in 1999.
That's true.
So yeah,
But,
we loved our phones.
anyway, I just thought that those things were super funny and worth mentioning. Like the busy signals. You remember busy signals?
Oh.
And they had video on these phones. She had video
Yeah,
phones all
And they
thought
were
out.
so annoyed when he could get a call through, but the video wasn't also working.
Yeah.
He was so annoyed by
It's
that.
just a voice call.
I'm like, oh, thank God I don't have to look at people on this phone more often than I do.
no kidding.
Ooh,
Yeah.
Zoom can go die in a fire.
Yeah, like I don't just FaceTime people.
I have FaceTime turned off.
People do though. People love to.
I
FaceTime.
know.
Not me. Mm-mm.
The kids, come on.
All right. Thank you for that intermission. Back to fantastical food.
All right. So I wanted more food in this. I'm not gonna lie. You get, in the 1300s, there's the usual staples of bread and cheese, the greasy gruel,
A lumpy sack of onions.
the lumpies that she used as a seat, and then cinnamon flavored venison. So a lot of spices in this time was used to cover up rotting meat.
Right.
And I kept thinking, so they have this huge 2-week feast at Christmas, and they're just eating on that. Just no
for
refrigerator.
like a couple days.
Yeah, you would think Kivrin would have gotten food poisoning, but maybe her
She
T-cell
had T-cell
enhancements.
enhancements.
There are so many little magical tricks.
Yeah. And then in the 2050s, you had the Brussels sprouts, your bacon and eggs,
You're right.
etc.
They'd mentioned a trencher at some point.
Oh, yeah,
which
yeah.
I appreciate. I love a trencher.
Yeah.
Mr. Finch was so worried they were getting very low on marmalade.
That's right.
As Colin smeared marmalade on his toast and Mr. Finch is glaring at him.
The gobstopper that he like wipes off on his windbreaker.
He's got this fuzzy gobstopper that he's eating through the whole
It's
book.
so funny.
Yeah.
All right. Soap stuff.
Oh my
soap
god.
Stuff,
Okay.
soap stuff.
The soap stuff in this is so good, you guys. So Baudry constantly being on the verge of telling Dunworthy.
I wrote that down. I'm so proud of myself for
you
finding
did it.
one.
I still can't do it, guys.
He's like, oh, the fix. It was. And then he's like, and he falls back into unconsciousness.
Like
It's so
12
funny.
times.
It happened so many times. And I would be like, I wish he would just start. Next time he wakes up, I wish he would start where he left off instead of being like, Dunworthy, the fix. Don't say that. Say the next 3 words.
Well, and I think there's at least 2 back-to-back scenes where he's like, he's awake again. He's awake again.
They go get Dunworthy. Dunworthy puts on his whole hazmat gear to go in the room, and by the time he's in, the nurse is like, "You can't be in here. He's asleep." And I'm like, it's funny. It's like the book mirrors a lot of the frustrations and repetition of real life.
Yes,
but
yes.
like it's a book.
You don't have to have like waiting.
Connie, I only have so much time.
Not to be so much of a TV person, since I said the same thing about I thought that Big Time would be a good short film. I think this would make a great miniseries.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think a lot of the things that happen over and over in this could be communicated visually in the background.
Agreed.
You could see angry bell ringers off here in the background while Mr. Dunworthy is doing a thing, and it wouldn't be so disruptive. But like on the page, it has to take center stage to be
that's true.
written out for you to read. So I think that this has a great miniseries in it if anyone out there is making miniseries.
Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix will do 1 season and then they'll be like, and then it's canceled. You never get to find out what happens.
The sleeping bit reminds me of the Twitter thing. It's like, are you a hunk shoe or a me?
I just Googled to see if there was any adaptations. There's not.
I just want to. Can we cast the bell ringers?
Listen, they save the day in the end. Mr. Finch becomes a bell ringer. I love his arc.
Oh, and you remember Mr. Gilchrist, who's like a primary antagonist in the modern era. And at one point, Mr. Dunworthy says to Colin, I hope he gets it. And then Mr. Dunworthy gets sick and then wakes up and Colin's like, Gilchrist is dead. Mr. Latimer had a stroke. Aunt Mary is dead.
Ugh.
Oh, it's so sad.
That was
It
rough.
was a little fun. Gilchrist kind of got what was coming.
I
to
wasn't
him.
sad about Gilchrist
No, I
dying. He
wasn't.
was the worst.
I was really sad about Mary.
Yeah. She's an angel.
She had a line that I highlighted when I was looking back at my notes last night. She said, "One never becomes accustomed to the idea that there's nothing one can do."
I
Yeah.
know. I loved her.
I loved her too.
She was such a like take charge kind of lady.
It was funny how she delegated tasks. Like Mr. Dunworthy is a history teacher, but now he's a contact tracer.
Yep.
And then like William ends up calling and getting Baudry's NHS number and his vaccination history. And then Colin is like delivering medications and checking on people. And I'm like, but she is mobilizing every resource she has.
That is some Ernest Shackleton level of leadership.
Maybe
right
she's
there.
maybe she's my feminist favorite.
There you go.
Great Aunt Mary. I love her.
I also there's just little scenes of tenderness too, like when Dunworthy makes sure that he has a good Christmas, like gets him a little present. Like,
know.
you don't have to put that in a book ever, but it doesn't advance the plot, and it's just
Dunworthy's
sweet.
like the best man character I've ever read. He cares for children. He's not weird to his beautiful young student.
Yeah.
He's like a good
He's
dude.
good with kids too. Like he has a beat on what Colin might want.
Yeah, he's like, he doesn't want that muffler.
Yeah, he's always going to bed at 1 a.m. because he works hard.
I know. Dunworthy.
Good old Mr. Dunworthy. I'm glad he pulled through.
The hero we deserve.
Oh my God. And I love how Colin dresses them to go to the Middle Ages from the Richard
Dracula
III
coat.
costumes.
He's in a Dracula cape.
Just like a pair of like rain boots.
Dunworthy's like,
Those are his
where did you
wellies."
get this? Is this from a production of Hamlet? And Colin's like, Richard III. I had to take the hump out. And then I didn't know what that was about, so I Googled it, and apparently Richard III
III
did
has a
not
hump.
have a hunchback, but Shakespeare wrote him with the hunchback, so that's what they had in the costume closet.
And then they dug him up in like a parking lot in England somewhere.
It's so
yeah,
funny.
they did. Okay, did you like the book?
Absolutely, I
I did. This is one of the most accessible sci-fi books I've ever read. It could be an airport read.
I waffled on whether this was science fiction, but
Yeah,
or fantasy even.
I
But
thought that too. Like it's the
It's
time
got time
travel,
travel.
bit, yeah, but it's definitely more of a fantasy.
time travel was definitely integral to the plot, and it's
Yeah,
a
and
good
there's
metaphor
technology.
for a lot of things she was trying to say. But it's okay.
It is something different too. So
It was so readable. I
was
was
so
never
readable.
confused. Even though I think it needs a heavy edit, I think the story is so good. The characters, the core characters are great.
it's very human.
There are arcs. People go through things. They have changes.
Yeah.
I laughed. I cried. And it all makes sense.
It all-
I mean,
every
well,
sense.
actually, that's not true. I did complain about a few things that didn't make sense. But the story makes sense.
I would like to know where Blasingame was that whole time.
He was with his
We
mistress.
never
soap
find out.
stuff.
We never find out.
That is some stuff.
He was in Tahiti.
We never
With
find
Jan.
out. Made me so mad.
But did we always wonder where he was because it was on every page? Yes.
Yes. Star Wars or Lord of the Rings.
I dare y'all.
I abstain.
This takes place in Oxford. Do you know who is from Oxford?
Tolkien?
Yes.
Oh, I like that.
So it's Lord of the Rings. And there's
So-
a pub.
This is hard for me because I like this book, but it's also Lord of the Rings because cloaks, horses, thatched roofs. It's basically the Shire.
It's in a shire. It's in Oxfordshire.
The Shire gone wrong.
Sorry, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I have no objections. I didn't have an opinion on it. That's true. I couldn't pick.
Okay, coming up next time, Citeen by C.J. Sherry, which I definitely should have already started reading.
It's real big.
Very long.
That's it.
That's it.
Okay.
Bye.
We did it. Bye.
Hugo girl. Hugo girl. Hugo girl. A hilarious podcast.
Willis stated she sees feminism as a precinct of the PC police and therefore does not claim membership.
Terrorist jacket.
No. That's my misogynist moment.